Hello and welcome to 11FS Spotlight. My name is David Breer. In this show, we shine a bit of a spotlight on the best and the brightest in the tech and financial services industry to try and understand what is it that gets them going, growing, and what they really think the future of the industry will look like. On today's Spotlight, I am delighted to be joined again by Tui Allen, the head of product at Shopify. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, David. Thanks so much for having me back. You guys are one of my favorites.
It's been a little while since we chatted, but I mean, a lot's obviously happened since then as well, which we'll definitely kind of get into. But what we want to do a little bit is on this show is talk a little bit about your career, what sort of motivates you in that sense in terms of where you're at, and obviously the building for and serving those small businesses in that sense in the way that you guys are absolutely crushing from Spotify. I think you're the kind of archetypal fintech in that sense, particularly in the embedded piece in terms of all the things that you're doing. I think we did an after dark last night. I think you came up roughly 87,000 times if your ears were sort of burning slightly.
Only 87,000?
I know, I'm sorry. We'll up it next time. But maybe if we start a little bit with, for an international audience, sort of what is Shopify? What do you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So Shopify, we like to view ourselves as a platform that really serves entrepreneurs from a commerce perspective from the ground up. You can think of us as sort of the invisible layer that enables small businesses, entrepreneurs, and creators to have this huge, bigger, larger than life presence on the internet, enabling them to sell their products both at point of sale in terms of brick and mortar, on the internet in terms of online commerce, and through multiple channels through Google, Facebook, Instagram, etc. And so unlike others, you may not have heard of Shopify if you're just out there purchasing, because we actually don't promote our brand. We actually really are sort of the behind the scenes sort of platform that powers commerce on the internet. Yeah. So that's a little bit about Shopify.
So in that context, I mean, what are you doing at a fintech conference in that sense? Like, because obviously, I mean, what you do and the conversations we've had, because I'm a fintech geeky guy, then we always sort of gravitate to that. But you guys do so much more than just the financial services sort of lens on that, don't you?
We do. And I'm the fintech geeky girl here. So this is very fun to be actually live and back in person. So you're right. Shopify does a lot more, but one of the things that we know small businesses really struggle with is all of the challenges that go with managing money, cash flow, and sort of the financial side. And so our goal is to really sort of make that invisible so that merchants and small businesses don't have to worry about that aspect of running a business. So really, in terms of Shopify and the reach that we provide, we offer services for fulfillment, so shipping. We offer services for retail, point of sale. We offer sort of your entire commerce presence, channels, marketing, email, and then there's a whole suite of financial services that we'll probably talk about, because the reality is that running a business includes a lot of handling financial services.
It's interesting, isn't it? And when we've spoken before, it seems so logical. It seems so straight. You know, you solve a problem that uncovers another problem, and you can is that in a nutshell? Is that the director of product? Is that what you do? Is that how do you sort of, what is it that you do on a day-to-day basis to sort of knit those two things together? Because you can obviously have a great vision for a product, but somebody else has got to care about that, and hopefully it's the customer, right?
Right. Yeah. So what inspires me and my team is solving hard problems, and solving hard problems that ultimately bring customer benefit. And so really actually working closely with merchants to understand sort of their end-to-end life cycle and all the things that they deal with and the things that sort of make them want to pull their hair out, and then ultimately figuring out ways that we can go in, solve those hard problems through technology so that they don't even have to think about those problems. Yeah,
I think you're having done a lot of these interviews and done a lot of the things, your appearances on FinTech Insider have actually shaped our companies. Like, I'm not saying this just to kind of like blow smoke up your ass type thing in terms of that sense of it, but we talked for 4 or 5 years about the underserved and overcharged, and you added overwhelmed to that, which we've actually added into our thing. Like, how much do you think in this this sort of world that we live in right now, that overwhelmed part of what's happening with, not just pandemics, but the complexity of just being a normal person in the normal world is more overwhelming than ever. So, and businesses are not immune to that, are they?
No, they're not. You're so right. So yes, I love that you guys have adopted the sort of overwhelmed aspect to being underserved and overwhelmed.
We'll pay you your royalties for that at a later date. It'll come as a big check. So.
I appreciate that. You're totally right. So we've kind of come through the pandemic, and that has kind of created this very interesting change in the world of commerce. But if you're an entrepreneur or small business, you're now sort of just coming out of that, and it was a very, very tough period of time. Although I think most really strong small businesses grew a lot during that tough period of time. But we're now into this new inflection point of this geopolitical, geoeconomic changes, and we're in another very tough period. And so Shopify very much so is there to sort of help support merchants and help them sort of make it through this next wave that we're in right now. And to your point, I think more than ever, small businesses and entrepreneurs do feel underserved, and we're there to figure out where are those points that they still feel underserved that we can actually help bring technology and innovation to help them actually make it through this next wave.
Yeah. Do you see the complexities as different post-pandemic than pre-pandemic in that sense, or because I guess in that context there are a lot of people leaving corporate jobs to start small businesses to do that. So the landscape feels quite dramatically different.
It is. So we are seeing some similar, and then we're seeing some new changes. So some of the things that we're seeing new patterns, obviously a lot of our small businesses and merchants that are on our platform have recognized that people are going back out, and they do value in-person interactions. And so there's a big focus on making sure that we're connecting the retail components of what we bring to all the online commerce that some of our merchants have had. And really connecting the dots across those, which then ultimately sort of connects the dots across fulfillment and shipping associated with online channels and then offline sort of brick and mortar channels. So there's a move to brick and mortar. There's also the reality of supply chain challenges. And the supply chain challenges that are happening across the globe right now are very tough for small businesses and merchants. And we're right there working with them to try to solve those so that they're as least impacted and feel that they have the ability to have a partner who can actually serve them in this moment of where they're feeling very overwhelmed, very underserved. And then of course bringing into the financial services side of things, during the pandemic we really pushed hard on expanding Shopify Capital because it's a lifeline for so many merchants, and we've seen the data that shows the correlation between merchants who took Shopify Capital and their growth compared to those who didn't. And so we're again innovating in the space of lending. Speaking of being a lender here, in terms of not only expanding what we do with Shopify Capital, but also expanding credit products so that we can actually provide, whether it's short infusions of cash or whether it's longer, bigger term infusions of cash, but to help merchants through this new time of uncertainty that we're in.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, how do you? I mean, that's a lot. There's a lot there, isn't there? And the complexities of this period, but the complexities of small businesses more broadly are ratcheting up, aren't they? And the different things you need at different sort of points in the growth of businesses are very different. So from a complexity of the problem perspective, and as the owner of the product in that sense, like how do you try and simplify these things as much as possible and raise them where they need to be? That the UX, the experience of engaging with these things has to be so slick, doesn't it? So, and that's not just a pretty interface, is it? It's the whole sort of ethos behind the product. Like, how do you rationalize that?
Yeah, so I think it all starts with like taking a step back and actually from a product and a UX and engineering perspective, really taking that step back and understanding the problem we're solving and who we're solving the problem for, and ultimately spending time with merchants and actually listening and really, really listening. So I just got back from Australia where we spent some time working and on the ground, literally listening to the current challenges that our merchants are facing, whether it's like trying to adjust from a world of being completely online to now a world where they need to be online and brick and mortar, whether it's managing supply chain challenges, the reality of what that's introducing, the cash flow stretching and expanding and changing world that they're in. But listening to our customers and our merchants is so important when it comes to solving the right problems. And then ultimately, not just necessarily taking that answer verbatim, but actually spending time to go deep in terms of like, how can we then ask the 5 whys, go deep, and then ultimately figure out how Shopify can help merchants in a way that they didn't even realize that the solution could possibly be there, by taking the ecosystem that we have, whether it's with our partners, whether it's with other apps, whether it's with our platform, and then ultimately sort of solving a problem in a way that's innovative from what a merchant may have thought they wanted to ultimately something that really truly solves the problem.
Yeah, that must be really exciting. It's a real sort of privilege to see. Are you seeing sort of different geos sort of solving or having different sort of reactions to those problems as well? Because the complexities of being an SME in Australia is very different to in the US, very different to other jurisdictions. So I mean that must be another great part of the role.
It is. It's a lot of fun.
Traveling aside, but so.
In some ways, there's a lot of global similarities with commerce, and the world that we live in has become much more connected, and maybe even more so through the pandemic. But then in many ways, you do need to go deep and realize that every region, and you could even take the United States where we are right now today sitting, and each state and each part of California is very different than Texas, and each state has its own regional and cultural differences, which you do have to kind of listen and understand. And so when you think about things globally, we're doing a lot of work, obviously in Asia Pacific, but also in India and in Europe, and of course in North America, there are nuances to how things work in those markets, and we have to listen and we have to understand what those are, and then bring those into how we solve problems in a way that meets the needs of that market, but still keeps it incredibly simple and incredibly scalable. Because what you don't want to do is have sort of a Frankenstein of too many different ways of doing things across the globe. And so finding that balance between bringing regional specificity where it matters, but then ultimately thinking on a global scale.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? And that tension is always there, isn't it? The holy grail of functionality that gets rolled out globally, it leads to that one size sort of almost fitting nobody in that sense in terms of the real problems. But I mean, every time I talk to you, the passion for the subject matter sort of exudes from you in that sense. I mean, it feels like the problems that you can solve for organizations is almost infinite, really, in there. So, I mean, your backlog must be long in that sense, right? What's next on your Shopify backlog?
Yeah, we always say that we will never, starve. If anything, we'll just have indigestion because we have so many opportunities and so many things, so many great problems to solve. And so really being focused on sort of prioritization and alignment of mission across the company is very important to us. In terms of the financial services side, I think we mentioned earlier, we're kind of entering this new wave of uncertainty that looks different than the pandemic wave of uncertainty. And so helping merchants with managing their cash flow. And, we have obviously some statistics that we know that 82% of small businesses fail in their first 5 years due to poor cash flow management. And so for Shopify, we really want more small businesses to grow and to thrive. And there's a ton of opportunity in terms of what we can do around sort of financial services, new credit products, new lending innovation, new money management tools, accounting functionality. Really, ultimately, our goal, and I do feel passionately about this, I've got a mom who's a clothing designer and entrepreneur who's actually on the Shopify platform, but is also a wholesaler. And
you must get some amazing feedback over Sunday lunch then. It's
so much feedback. It's great though. Again, I feel like I have a direct source, which is awesome. And one of the things that is, she again is a designer and loves building product. What she hates is running the business and all of the overhead and that feeling of being overwhelmed. And Shopify has a real opportunity to make the whole running the business component invisible. And that's where we're looking to innovate. So as you know, in the world of fintech and some of the different financial services products we've brought to market, Shopify Capital has been around since 2016. We've lent over $3 billion. We launched this year fully to general availability Shopify Balance as a money management account. We're innovating in the credit space. We have a ton of innovation happening in the payment space. Our Buy Now Later partnership with Affirm. The opportunity we have to bring all of that together and to help merchants and small businesses not have to worry about managing their finances or reconciling their finances or dealing with their accounting or dealing with their taxes or dealing with their tax filing is massive. And so they can really just focus on designing and building that great product, which is where they're passionate. So that's the area of innovation that I'm most excited about, is how do we make all this this feeling of uncertainty and feeling overwhelmed and underserved. How do we make all that go away so that we can bring confidence to our merchants and they can focus on the thing they love, which is building product, and we can help them run the business.
That's fantastic. I mean, that's a very good vision to get out of bed for, right? It's every 1% difference you make on that is material to the GDP of countries. You know, I mean, in terms of the 1 more % of businesses not going out of business is a very big difference to a country. It's amazing.
It's huge, and one of the things that also keeps me up, and I think about why I'm so passionate about what we're doing at Shopify. Small businesses are the fabric of the modern economy, and for the past bullish market that we've been in, large businesses and corporations have really sort of taken over. But in order to bring balance to the economy that we all want to be in and have a very thriving, creative economy, we need small businesses to succeed, and Shopify is incredibly passionate about that. We're merchant obsessed. It's in our DNA. And I mean, the more time you go out, and we actually just had coffee this morning with a merchant, and it's a small coffee shop, and it's like that's what makes the world a great place.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, we're going to run out of time rapidly. I'm afraid we could talk about this stuff for hours, but I know you've got places to be. One thing we always like to ask people at the end of these is kind of, I mean, you've had a great career. You've been by no means are you at the end of it. There's all sorts of stuff you're going to be offered doing. But what advice would you give to yourself sort of starting out in that sense? Because, I mean, it's nice to look back and everything seems quite logical, but it's tough in the middle there, isn't it, for sure?
Yeah, definitely. I think if I had to give my younger self some advice, I'd probably say take more risks, enjoy the journey, and have fun. Because life is short, and I think when you're young, that's the time to experiment, take risks, but enjoy the journey too. Some you'll fail at, some you'll win at, some, but life is short, and so take more risks early.
Definitely, yeah. If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger in that sense, doesn't it? For sure. Awesome. Well, Tui, thank you so much for coming back again. Where can people learn a little bit more about you and all the work that you're doing at Shopify?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm probably most active on LinkedIn, Tui Allen. And then in terms of Shopify, you can find us at Shopify on Twitter. You can find us on LinkedIn. We're pretty prevalent out there in all the different social media channels.
Fantastic. All right. Well, as for us, that is all the time that we've got for you today. You can find 11FS on pretty much every social media channel at this stage. Just search for us or FinTech Insider, whatever you want to be doing. If you have liked this episode, subscribe to FinTech Insider, subscribe to the 11FS channel over there on YouTube for this and every other episode that we've done as well. Thank you very much for making time. Thank you very much for joining us. See you soon.